Here we go. R&B.
Ron, how you doing?
Good. It's been a while, Bruce. It's been a while. I'm just kidding. We just recorded 2 episodes back to back so we could have, we have demand. So we're like churning out content. How are you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I'm excited about our topic.
I know you came up with a great topic. Why don't you set us up? Set us up with this topic, and I'm following your lead today.
Yeah, I had been thinking about like obviously future topics. We've done a couple of film ones, and so thinking we have to cycle back and do something on music. And knowing you, Ron, and someone who is a great singer, loves singing, does a lot of theater and that kind of thing, I think this would be right up your alley. So I was thinking if we each came up with our own top 5 list of who we consider to be underrated singers. Doesn't have to be in a particular order, but I thought it'd be a fun one to kind of go back and forth on, and something I know you'd be super excited about.
I know, I'm so excited about this because we talk about my favorites like Neil Diamond and Meatloaf and I just like, so today it's like, this is like really challenging, and it brought up for me, like making the list, like brought up for me, like how much, like what I really respect about voices and the instrument, and how when you have someone who has such a dynamic like voice, how impactful it is to a song and how it just brings everything together. And it's like when I think of Baba O'Reilly, it's hard to take Roger Daltrey away from that, right? Musically, there's so much going on, but the texture and the tone and where he put, like how he thrusts his epic voice, like it's hard to take it away from it. But when you think about like lesser known or lesser talked about singers, it made me really appreciate how much they bring to the table and how much they brought to the songs that I love. So like, let's just dive right in. Do you want to do one by one?
Yeah, we'll do one by one. And I don't know if you wanted to get your honorable mentions out of the way first and then get into the list.
Yeah.
So why don't you start with I think you mentioned you had 2 honorable mentions, and I'll mention mine, and then we'll just get into our list.
All right, my first honorable mention. My first honorable mention is ridiculous. But I had to bring him up. He's like if I could have anyone's voice, I would want his voice. Adrian Zmed. You did not expect me to say that, did you?
No, not at all. Not in a million years.
Adrian, but he had like a legit rock career. Like he had not a rock career, but he did a bunch of, like he had some rock songs and stuff.
God, that's a name from the past. Holy cow.
You were not expecting that.
No.
I followed him through his theater stuff. So I listened to him when I was directing theater. He was in a show called Children of Eden. And he plays Adam, like from Adam and Eve. And then he plays Noah from the Noah's Ark in the second act. And his voice is, I mean, it's just excellent. Like it's so warm and it's so open. And I mean, he has a beautiful range, and it's just a great voice, and it's like, it's functional. It does so much. And even like when you hear like his rock turn, like where he did like in Grease 2, your favorite movie. Yes, it's in my top 10. When he's like,
got the Blu-ray of it. I'm looking at it right now.
I have the Laserdisc, and the Criterion collection. And but with like he has such, he can within the rock pop genre, he can like he goes like he has a lot of depth and a lot of adaptability. And I just think he's an excellent performer. I watched sometimes on YouTube, he had a bunch of cruise ship shows. And
you're hardcore, Ron.
I'm hardcore. Like I've watched documentaries about Adrian Zmed. I think he's great.
Yeah.
So that's one of my honorable mentions. And then here, what's one of your honorable mentions?
One of my honorable mentions, Simon Labon of Duran. Someone who sung on innumerable big pop hits of the 80s. Such a distinctive voice that we know from then. And, a very interesting range. Again, brought a lot of character to that Duran sound, which is a mix of a little bit of rock guitar, some chic, like with the drumming and the bass of it. It's a very distinct dynamic, mixed in with just this artful, with a design, with the album covers and just the suits and everything else. But he just had that perfect voice for that particular group, I think, and someone who I don't think gets kind of singled out a lot in any lists of like vocalists. So he's one that's definitely my honorable mention.
Well, it's like I love Peter Gabriel, right? And the only reason I know about Peter Gabriel is because he had a solo career. I didn't know about his work in
Genesis.
thank you. I'm so tired. I didn't know, right? Like I didn't know prior to watching documentaries about Genesis and whatever. Like I just assumed it was Phil Collins, right? I mean, they have very different voices, but it's the same thing. I think so. When like with Duran, like I know it as the group, you know.
Yep.
So, right on. I can't use Peter Gabriel because he's pretty known. So my second honorable mention, which I'm going to talk more about later, one of my favorite rock albums ever. We call it in the real hardcore classic rock community, we call it the Brown album, is Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay.
Like, the concept album of Jesus Christ Superstar, which I'm obsessed with that album. Like it's, that's like the Who's Tommy is my absolute favorite album. Like, but Jesus Christ Superstar, I mean, comes as like, that's something I could just listen to all the time, you know, and I would be a tree in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar if I was not the tree that Judas hangs himself in, but like I would be a tree. Like I love that show so much. If there's ever an opportunity, I always audition for it. I played Jesus once, just saying. But Murray Head, who was on the original album, are you familiar with him? Like,
no.
Oh, okay. So he did a bunch of like, he was an actor, but he was mostly a singer too, like back in the day. And he plays Judas on it. And Judas is a really hard, it's like musically so challenging. It's super rangy, super high, super screamy. And Murray Head is just excellent in it. Like he just brings that album to life. He did like One Night in Bangkok, like he did like a bunch of songs, and he sang Superstar. And
Yep.
he has a great raspy voice, but it has depth. Like I don't know what his actual color is, like if he's a tenor or baritone, but he has all the high notes and he has body to him, and it's such a great rock voice. And I don't feel like he's up there with Daltrey, and he is like he should be, you know.
Yeah.
For people, because there's an album of there's a recording that Roger Daltrey actually played Judas in 1996, I think, production, or in the 90s, a production of Jesus Christ Superstar for the BBC. And it's that same kind of like, he hits all the high notes, but there's body to it, there's depth. So it's just a great instrument. I keep saying, I'm gonna say that forever, just a great instrument. All right, here we go. Who's your number 5?
Well, you mentioned Peter Gabriel, and you probably could have mentioned him. He actually came close to at least being an honorable mention for me, because even as well known as he is, it's one of those things that is he known more for the songs rather than the great vocalist that he is. And on a similar note, I mean, it's almost ridiculous to mention this name because it's one of the biggest pop names of all time. But someone who I don't think gets a lot of credit for his actual singing is Phil Collins.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I mean, he's someone that, when he wants to do grit, can do the grit, does great on the ballads, and the problem is that he was so ubiquitous in the 80s at some point that there was such a huge Phil backlash just because he was everywhere. And, some of the hits, they got a little softer and softer. But I mean, you listen to like the early Genesis stuff and, his early solo recordings, I think he's got one of the best set of pipes out there. But definitely doesn't get quite the mention, that I think he deserves. So,
or the respect, like,
yeah. And great drummer too. Drummer,
phenomenal drummer,
great songwriter. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of things that I think he, gets slighted on. So,
Air Tonight is one of my favorite songs ever.
Yeah, changed the face of 80s recording and the sound of 80s, because obviously that was the signature drum sound. And it's funny because people always give that gated, drum sound so much crap. But when you think about In the Air Tonight and, that third Peter Gabriel album where it was first introduced, it was such a fresh, innovative sound. And then it got copied to death. And that's why we have that kind of that icky feel about it. Yeah. But for its time, it was amazing.
Oh, and it's so like it's so powerful. Yeah, I'm with you, Phil Collins, 100%.
Awesome.
Okay. My number 5. Oh wait. So my number 5 is Dee Snider from Twisted Sister.
Dee Snider, yeah, okay.
Right, I saw a documentary about them recently, and like again, I really like him. I've always liked him, like as a performer. I love the grit and the hustle, of how they place themselves on the map. But then I've recently heard or like watched like YouTube videos of like acoustic versions of him singing like "We're Not Gonna Take It." And again, it's just such a powerful vehicle for emotion. Like his voice is just so piercing and has so much body and weight to it. Like as like someone who has a higher voice, like I'm so appreciative of the grounded like earthiness of his voice. So I just like that's it. I just love Dee Snider. Always have. I'm a fan.
Very cool. My number 5 would be John Anderson of the group Yes.
Oh.
You know, when you think of sort of a pre-Sting high tenor voice, that's the voice right there. You know, again, a dynamic range, a lot of signature hits that they've had across multiple decades. And someone who, if you actually go and watch recent clips of him, you know, usually like a lot of our older singers, they've lost a lot of that range, you know, can't quite hit those notes. He still has retained so much of the character of his voice. And someone that, you know, when you discuss like classic rock lists and, you know, all-time great vocalists, he's not someone that you always see in that top 10, but definitely deserving. I mean, he's just phenomenal. What, you know, for such a signature, distinctive sound and tone.
Excellent. And now I'm going to be embarrassed by my number 4 because like that's a real artist. Like, yes, a great band, right? Like my number 4 then is going to sound like a joke, but I'm sorry if you really listen.
Tiny Tim.
How'd you know? Almost, actually, very much almost. David Cassidy.
Oh, okay. I'm ready. I'm ready to hear this argument.
His voice is like if you took like a Bobby Darin crooner, and I saw him live, actually. I saw him in Vegas live once, like years ago. And it's such a pleasant voice. And then when you listen to him like do like a rock cover or something, like, I mean, the guy was like a total douchebag, I think, but like his voice is so whole and so engaging, and like it just sounds effortless. Like it has this like, I can't even mimic it, where it's like, and I'm not talking about the Partridge stuff. Like I'm talking about anything he's done. It's such a unique sound, and it's like he had no choice but to be a singer, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a great rock voice, like a great rock baritone. Like he didn't need to go high. Like it's just, God, there's so much emotion and so much color to it. Oh, I know, because I randomly saw something about him the other day, and I was like, I started watching YouTube videos of him, like even later, like in like the 2000s, and God, it has like a rock, like a raspiness, and at the same token, a buttery crooner voice. It was awesome.
No, yeah, no, for sure. I definitely appreciate his talent. You know, it's funny because I guess I'm going to readjust my list, because to kind of piggyback off you, because I think they suffered a similar fate. I guess number 4 would be Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees.
Mickey Dolenz.
And I think both of them kind of suffered a little bit because of the respective television shows they were on, simply because of how they were perceived. You know, I think among the rock intelligentsia, those of us who grew up with those shows, we didn't care. We loved it for what it was, appreciated it. But if you think about it, Mickey Dolenz has sung in one of the greatest pop catalogs of the 60s, bar none, regardless of, you know, who wrote it or whatever, who, you know, played on it, regardless. It's one of the most distinct pop voices of that era. So much character, so much theatricality. He's an actor. He brings a lot of that to it. Definitely someone who I feel has been slided, and the group too. I know we plan to do like a Monkees episode in the future, but someone who I think deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, we'll see if that comes to pass or whatever, but I think him and Cassidy kind of suffer a similar thing, where they don't get the credit because they're overshadowed by the sort of the machine. And it's funny because both of them produced by Cold Gem, so it's under the same umbrella as well. So,
well, you know, it's fine. I was surprised by how, because I always loved Mickey Dolenz, the voice. I just thought, wow, like, you know, like what a great tenor, like, and a great, not a affected, like he's not forcing a rock sound, but he's allowing the folksy, almost John Denver-y, and the theater, like he did a lot of musicals too. So like he allowed that open sound to come out. I just saw a documentary about Harry Nilsson, and I didn't realize Mickey Dolenz would hang out with Nilsson, with Lennon. They would have like their own room at
Yeah, the Hollywood Vampires.
the Hollywood Vampires, right? Like,
Yeah.
so he was legit, right? And he worked with all those guys. So like he produced with them, he sang with them. So he's credible as hell.
Yeah, he's they used to call him one take Dolans. You know, he used to
Right.
go in there, hit his parts, and you know, he was also someone who said he never had problems with range. You know, you could just kind of hit those notes. Just a perfect pop voice, you know, especially on those 60s hits. It was just so
Yeah.
distinctive, you know, and someone again deserves much more credit.
So it's like we're really like, you know, it's funny that the test that we're comparing everyone to, or the kind of the litmus that everyone is like adhering to, is like range, texture, quality, emotional expression, right? That's what we're saying, is like that's what seems to be making or breaking these people on the list, right?
Yeah.
So along those lines, I'm going to throw down, this one is actually, this one is not like a joke, like Ian Gillian from Deep Purple.
Oh yeah.
Right. And my intro to Ian Gillian was through Jesus Christ Superstar again. So he played Jesus on Jesus in the album. He sang the role of Jesus Christ Superstar. And again, baritone, dude's a baritone with a tenor range. So he's up there screaming high C's like it's nothing, you know, and it's full body, but so much emotion. I've seen videos of him singing with opera singers, and like he blows them out of the water. But again, not a vocalist that is in like a lot of conversations. I did a quick look, top 10 singers. Dee Snider was on it, but like Ian Gillian wasn't on it, you know?
No, and it's funny because you think about it, like Deep Purple is one of the biggest bands ever. It's funny because in some ways they're more revered in England than here in the States, because they're considered up there with Zeppelin, Floyd, you know, like one of the major bands. I don't know if that's so much here, even though they obviously have a huge fan base. But I'm with you on that. Absolutely. And actually my next choice in a way also mirrors him. Someone who has sung in one of the major classic rock catalogs of all time. You know, everyone knows it. It's up there with Zeppelin and Beatles, right? David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. You know, sung this tremendous catalog, but again, it's, I think, overshadowed by the aura of what Floyd is. He's more known in some ways more for his guitar playing, but I would argue that as a singer, he's phenomenal. You know, his voice almost mirrors his guitar playing in that it's very ethereal, very breathy, pastoral. But when he wants to, he can put some grit in it, like songs like, you know, Young Lust and, you know, things like that. He can definitely bring the grit and the rock sound to a Money. You know, that's him full throating it kind of thing, but also can do the gentle ballads. And it just has this, he just has this tone that kind of floats over you. It creates such an aura and an atmosphere.
It sounds like a cloud.
Yeah. If you could personify it, you know, or, you know, if you could say like, what a cloud sound like? It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's what you think of. It's just airy is the only way I can think of it.
Yeah. So for like Dark Side of the, or like not Dark Side of the Moon, but like I can't even think. But so many of the songs, to your point, it's like it just like mesh it, like it Laffy Taffies into the orchestration, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you know, it's a catalog that everyone knows, but again, I think part of Floyd's mystique is that the guys sort of hid behind the handiwork. So, you know, no one really sort of got singled out, you know, individually, unless, you know, post breakup is when I think people started becoming aware of who was who. Yeah. But up until, you know, during the lifespan of the group, they hid behind a lot. And I think, you know, part of the price of hiding behind the handiwork is that you don't, I guess, get the full desserts, you know?
Yeah. And again, and I think his voice lent itself, like, whereas Daltrey is gunning for attention with an amazing bassist, an amazing guitarist, an amazing drummer, he's trying to sing over them, right? I think Gilmour is like, you know, he's just like immersing, like he's not, it doesn't see, I never feel like he's trying to fight it, you know?
No, it's not a thing that's like trying to stand out necessarily. It's enveloping. It just blends so perfectly, you know, into those songs.
Well, then I'm gonna do my next one then, which we're in the London, like the London rock scene here of the 60s and 70s. I'm gonna someone that I think similarly does this, that has that buttery kind of like, is David Essex.
Okay.
Are you a fan of David? Like, are you like
Yeah.
rock on? Like as a kid, I don't know, that song was like so like just branded in my brain. And I was always like the
There's swag. There's just like there's some swagger, with that voice. Yeah.
swagger, and like again that like heavier, like it feels like rain and clouds. Like
Yeah.
I taped the like I used to tape like when I was a kid, like He-Man. And so like I'd have like a big collection of He-Man tapes, and so you could watch them back to back, right? Like He-Man of the show and everything. And I remember there's one where there must have been like, we didn't have MTV. I grew up in Australia at that time. So at that time we MTV was like on the weekends, like it was like Friday night or something, but you didn't have like a straight up channel. So, but there would be sometimes before the cartoons, there'd be like music videos. So like, so I remember one time there was like, start me up and never stop. There was Mick Jagger, right? There's like the Stones singing that song. So I always hated that song because it was right before the show. And I'm like, I just want to get to my fucking episode. But Rock On was like in that taping, like it was like they had it right around that time. And I just remember that song, like Rock On. It's like so steady and chill and like
Such a vibe.
such a vibe,
Yeah.
And so it's stuck with me. And then a lot of the guys I'm listening to, like I then heard his recording of Evita. He was in production of Evita, and he was in London. So he's on the cast recording of the London production of Evita, which is a straight up like it's half, or the part that he plays is a full on rock, like it's written rock music, and then the rest is almost like musical theater opera. But I just think he's so gritty and real, and I keep saying gritty, but like he's just, his voice is like you go, oh, I could attain that, but then he'll do something like I mean, there's like his catalog is like full of these songs where you're like, oh, wow, what an interesting voice. Like I would listen to him order Chinese food. Like, like it's just like it just sounds like it's so dynamic and there's so much complexity to it. So David Essex, like totally underrated. I think one of the greatest rock singers, but like a true rock voice.
Yeah.
Like it has all the components.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think we're down to my number 2 here. My number 2, again, someone who sang on a tremendous pop catalog, been around for a while, most of the 70s, but really found their groove late 70s and really dominated the 80s as part of a duo. And that is Daryl Hall of Hall & Oates.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, I've been kind of watching a lot of his stuff recently. And another guy who's retained his voice, he does this show called Daryl's House, Live from Daryl's House, and has different guests. And, they'll do, kind of the guest songs, the Hall & Oates songs, but just a tremendous, tremendous voice that you can tell, what the formula of Hall & Oates was they had the songwriting chops, Beatlesque hooks, that kind of thing, but borrowed so much from like, Motown and, R&B, soul music, even a lot of the arrangements as they really started getting their grooves, stuff like Man Eater, I Can Go For That. I think, I Can't Go For That. I think it's admittedly, I think Michael Jackson took the Beat It kind of rhythm for that song. But again, just tremendous, tremendous pop singer, tremendous range. I think his mother was a music teacher and had him doing scales from like a very young age. So, had a great ear and, tremendous talent.
Awesome. I just want to say maybe this is our episode for just men, and we'll do women, like another episode. Like I just had to throw this out there because I'm like as you're saying that, I started thinking about all these others. Anyway, so like all the others, all the female singers that we didn't list, and they're phenomenal female singers. So I just want to put that out there. I love, yeah.
Having it's funny because having watched recently, I think Summer of Soul, the Questlove documentary. I think I saw it like a month ago. Like all the female singers in that movie blew me away.
Yeah.
Just incredible natural talent. I was just amazed. So for sure, we'll get around to creating that list.
Because I want to list, like I just want to put out there. It's like I'm gonna say like in that, like I want us to talk about Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
Like what could she not do?
Right.
And then I have a show. As of this recording, I have a show in a week where I'm going to be singing I'm going to sing "We Belong," Pat Benatar.
Yeah.
And just working trying to find my key and my range, like trying to find my version of that song. I'm like, she is phenomenal. Like Pat Benatar, like Jesus. Like what
Yeah.
she's my favorite female singer of all time. Like I know you're a big Olivia Newton-John person, but I'm like,
I love Olivia.
I know you do.
Yes, I do.
I know you have the poster from Greece like on your bedroom wall. But yeah, I was like Pat Benatar. I want to say Pat. I want to talk about her, but I was like, let's save that for the female. We'll do a female episode.
Sounds good. So who's your next person?
Oh, my number one,
Yes.
Pat Benatar. But no, I was like, okay, so if it was my number one, I'd say Pat Benatar. But for this today, since we're doing all dudes, I'm gonna say David Byrne
Wow.
from Talking Heads. You may ask yourself, watching the day go by. Like I'm such a David.
Do you think that's another guy who kind of gets overlooked because of the performance aspect is so in your face kind of thing?
I think it's the same idea. It's like Duran, Peter Gabriel, like right. Like do you ever see those the videos of Peter Gabriel when he was with Genesis and he's wearing the fox mask and all?
Yeah,
it's so
and the bulbous costume, and
yeah, right. Whereas so David Byrne, I mean, like he doesn't do concerts, he does one-man shows, you know?
Yeah.
With like the jackets with the arm or with the shoulder pads. I mean, like just and like on the phone. I mean, some of his acts are phenomenal. Like there was a recent one where, like I saw recently, a concert they did, and he does like so much cool stuff, so much theatricality. But when you like zero in on the instrument, phenomenal. It's not the most rangy. It doesn't have to be, you know, like again, Leonard Cohen like sings maybe like 6 notes, but they're all full with so much soul. I think David Byrne has like everything that all these other guys that I really like even Dee Snider, like I think he just encapsulates all that and can move effortlessly amidst the notes while he's jumping and running and doing all sorts of crazy things. So like that's a well-trained. Like that's a well-trained instrument right there. And it's funny, I feel like the majority of my guys were baritones. And because normally like when I sing or like when I think of my favorite singers, they're all tenors. So this was like interesting.
Yeah.
All right,
good.
Without further ado.
All right. So my number one, again, another one that it's almost probably going to sound ridiculous to you, but not really if you think in terms of, do they really give due to the vocal instrument? And that is Prince.
Interesting. Yes, you're right. That is underrated. Like I recently saw
criminally underrated. Now here's the thing, and I've always thought like this is the price that you pay also for becoming a huge star, right? Mm-hmm. You know, because you think in the 80s, you Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, you know, those 4 were like your big 80s names. Prince is someone who I always felt suffered from the fame aspect, in the sense that he's so well known as a personality and as a performer and stuff like that, that the individual parts get lost. You know, he's someone who's definitely underrated as a guitar player. Since his passing, people have given more credit to that. You know, doesn't get the due as a songwriter. I mean, when you think of that streak of 80s hits that he had, I don't know where those songs came from in terms of just the creativity, the originality, the fact that he played everything on them, arranged them, the full deal. But the voice, that guy had an incredible voice. Again, could do ballads as well as any of the sort of Motown 60s stuff, you know, or the people that sort of he worshiped, like Sly Stone, James Brown, for that part, but also can bring the grit and the rock aspect, as he did more with the Purple Rain project, and really never touched upon it as much in terms of a rock context, but you heard it on the Purple Rain album. But you know, when he wants to kind of do that piercing wail and that scream, and always delivered live. That's the thing too. If you watch clips of him in concert while he's doing the splits and, you know, playing riffs, switching to bass or to drums, keyboards, never pitchy or off key, fully, you know, selling the song. I mean, he was flawless, that guy. He was on a whole nother level. And, you know, again, a big name that you think, well, he's got his due. Well, he has as a star, but not as, you know, as a musician and as a singer.
You know, it's so funny. I was recently watching him. He performed, I don't remember where it was, but he does a cover of, he plays with like Tom Petty and George Harrison's son, I think. They do While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And he does the guitar solo.
Killed it.
killed it. Like he brought
I
it
mean,
back to
George's
life.
song was like grinning ear to ear, you know, loving it, every minute of it.
Oh my God. It was, I mean, right? Like it was stunned. And I'm like, musical genius, you know, and for like, I just know him as like an eccentric and all that, like a weirdo, but yeah, that voice like gets into that screaming, like that screaming rock belt effortlessly. And then in the same token can do the ballads and great. Yeah. Again, but great baritone, like,
And effortless falsetto too.
whereas, you know, it's like, I remember as a kid, not getting him confused, but in my head, comparing him to Michael Jackson. And I think there's so much more, and I'm not taking away from Michael Jackson's vocal abilities, but because there's some tracks that Michael Jackson's singing, you know, and it's great. Like, but I mean, I would say Prince is a much more dynamic singer, much more complex, much more layered, right? Like you, I mean, there's different qualities, and his voice lends itself to different genres. I mean, yeah, he's phenomenal. Like, oh, musical genius. Like, again, say, like that man, it was not a choice for him to be a musician.
No, he was just touched by the gift. You could tell that, you know, as soon as he took to playing, it just was something that he was probably playing great, like year one kind of thing. You know, just one of those things like a Stevie Wonder that just, you know, that prodigious natural God-given gift.
What, you know, I in 2018 I directed an opera, and I'd like never even seen an opera before, and I was hired to direct an opera, and it was a Mozart.
So you were the perfect guy to do this then,
right? 2 weeks into it, I freaked out. I was like, "This is fucking Italian. I don't speak Italian." Like I like couldn't handle it, but we got through it. We did okay. With I remember like, you know, when you look at the score, it was Mozart. It was Così fan tutte, and when you look at the score. And I was like, God, like it's you see it on the page. Like do you read music, Bruce? You read music, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So you can just see it. Like you see the whole thing and you go, this guy had no reason. Like he had no reason to write it. Like he had no reason to think about a career in music. You know, what did a career in music look like back then? But he had no choice but to get these notes on the page. You know, you see it in the movie Mozart, but like, it's astounding to me when these people, like when their instrument, whether it be their ability to write, whether it be their singing, their guitar, bass, whatever, like when they can make this thing work in its optimal form, like where it's pitch perfect, it's evoking emotion, it's telling a story, it's transporting us to a different world. Like, how cool is that? You know, like how badass. It's just, and yeah, Prince and all these guys, I mean, like just touched, like, what a gift to this earth, you know. It makes you think positively about the world. Not you, I know you're a curmudgeon, but I'm just kidding.
But I'll tell you, you know, you learn pretty quickly when you try to do karaoke day and the other stuff. It's like, okay, that's why they're the professionals. That's why they are where they were. You think you sound good, and then you go to, you know, try to sing one of these songs. It's like, okay, I get it.
Whatever. I just want everyone to know Bruce is a great singer. I've sang with him before. You have a beautiful tenor, like you have beautiful, like also like an airy, folksy sound. Whatever, Bruce. Whatever.
Appreciate that, Ron.
I wish I could sing like you. Give me a break. Come on.
And yet we all wish we could sing like Prince.
That's true.
Yeah.
Tied to the whipping post. All right, my man. Great episode. Thank you so much. If you guys have someone on your list of male singers that we should have said male up front, but if you have a list of people on your list, if you have a list on your list, if you have a list that we didn't include, definitely put it in the chat. Like, let us know what your favorites are. I'm so curious.
Yeah, of course. Obviously,
underrated.
it's subjective, and there's so many names I know that we, you know, this was like a quick kind of thinking through it, but so many names that we can throw out there for different reasons, because, you know, overlooked voice, it doesn't mean like you're necessarily like the sort of perfect voice. It's really like a lot of it has to do with character and distinctive and stuff like that. So what some people would probably not consider great voices, other people would say, no, I mean, I love Bob Dylan, I love Neil Young, you know, and there's arguments to be made for why they're maybe overlooked in terms of just the quality of their singing as well. So
like Jim Morrison, it was hard for me not to add him to the list, but I was like, he's so iconic that I'm sure, like, I felt like he's acknowledged.
He was close to my list too. He was actually very, very close, but again, he's just, I think, so well known that it's like, so okay. Yeah.
You know, because what blew my mind is, you know, who his musical influences were? Sinatra and Elvis. Like
that's right. Yeah, I'd heard Elvis. Yeah.
But Sinatra, like Crystal Ship, you can hear it. Like,
yeah.
like the long phrases. And so I go like, that's an example of a great voice, but I think it's acknowledged. So I was like, I'd rather put in like these other guys, you know, David Cassidy.
Yeah.
David Cassidy to me has a very similar tone to Morrison. Crazy,
Yep.
crazy that I said that, but it's true.
Yeah.
Tone
No.
arrangements. Anyway, we could talk about this for hours. Bruce, thank you for your time and your expertise as per usual.
Yeah, thank you, Ron, and to all our viewers, thank you for sticking in there with us. And again, if you could leave a like, again, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon.
Very soon.